Hey guys, today we'll jump into the universe of 2D games by creating a nice scrolling background and also adding parallax to it. Alright, so let's get started with some simple stuff. Here is a rectangle defining what the player sees, and here's our background piece. Now let's assume that our camera is following a player, just like in Super Mario. When our player moves toward either side of the map, the background gets out of the frame and then it just looks awkward. Even if we try to scroll it, we would still see behind the background at some point. This is why we'll need more than just one background, and the amount we need will vary with the background size relative to the view zone of the camera. Let me just give you an example. I have a view zone that almost fits a single background here, so I'll create a total of 3 backgrounds and I'll put them one next to each other. So when the first one disappears, I'm not going to be able to see it, and it is going to replace the third one. Now in terms of code, we will label them as 1, 2, and 3. And now if our camera goes past the background number 3, we should take background number 1 and move it to the background 3 position plus the length of a background. And we can just keep doing that over and over, same thing for the other side. In code, all we really need to keep track of is which one is the most left background and which one is the most right background every time we scroll. And that is really all there is to it in terms of scrolling the background, so we can have an infinite background. Simple enough, right? But parallax is even easier. To achieve the desired effect of parallax, we need to tell the background to follow the movement of our camera, but at a different speed. This is what a normal follow looks like, and this is what a parallax follow would look like. Again, simple stuff this week, but it boosts the quality of our 2D game by quite a lot. So guys, you should be implementing something like this. It is really simple to do. Instead of having a static background or something that doesn't really have any parallax in it, just do that. It really improves the game by quite a lot. Alright, let's start implementing. Alright guys, so as always, let me present you the initial setup. So we have a main camera over here that is pretty much, I have my own script and it follows the moving object, this thing here. And if I go in game and show you this behavior really quickly, if I press on A, it goes left, and if I press on D, it goes right. So let's just assume that this would be our player view, this is what we'd see. Let's start by implementing a background image. So I will drag and drop this simple background image, and as you can tell, it takes pretty much the whole player view and a little bit more, so we'll be using this. Now, like I said in the theory, it doesn't have to. It could be that small and you could be positioning it in the center here. Alright, so like I said earlier, the best amount of background we could have is 3. We could have a minimum of 2, but 3 would be the best. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this background image, this sprite renderer, press copy, and then paste, and I'll just move it on this side until it perfectly matches. And now if we zoom in just a little bit here, as you can tell, this is not a perfect repeatable texture, and the reason is it goes with another texture on top of it, so that's why the person who made this didn't bother about doing this part. Don't worry about it. However, if you have this kind of problem in your texture, it doesn't repeat itself, what you could do is simply go up here and flip it. If you flip it, you're gonna have this kind of mirror effect here, but at least it is going to work, and you just keep going with that. So if I just move this on this side, it should work perfectly fine, as you can tell. So we just flip the picture and it looks a little bit better. At least it doesn't have a weird seam in the middle, but usually this works best when you do have a repeatable texture. So let's go back. This is our background number 1, this is our background number 2. Let's make sure they really stick together. There's no little line in between, so you're just gonna zoom in as much as you can and play with this value up here at the top. And as you can tell, mine is on 1163. That would be the perfect amount. Now I'm also going to flip this back to the original, and here it is. Alright, so we have one background, we have 2 backgrounds. Let's actually add a new one, because the best amount would be 3. I'm going to duplicate this one and then just put a minus in front of the position. This way it goes perfectly on this size. Alright, so we have our 3 backgrounds over here. What I'd like to do at this point is create another layer on top of that, another game object that just contains all of them. So we'll go up here, create a new empty game object. this is going to be, I'd like to call this background, but all my sprites inside of it are already called background. So, alright, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this background and just rename these one to 1, 2, and 3 in the order they appear on the screen. So 1 is the one over here, 2 is the one in the middle, and 3 is the last one. Now this doesn't have to be done. You don't really care about the name that much. What you only care about is the fact that you do have a background that contains all of your elements in it. And let's also go back and clean those values a little bit. So we said it was going to be minus 11.63 and also 11.63 here. Alright, so now we have a really clean setup. We're ready to start scripting. Alright, so now we have a perfect background over here, perfect for scrolling and parallax. We are going to duplicate it. You don't have to do this, but I need to have another layer just to see what's going on here. So I'll have another layer that I'll call floor, and as you can tell, they're on separate objects. So this one is floor, and I'm simply going to replace all the sprites I have here, all the backgrounds, by floor. And this is what I get. So this is my floor for this game, and I can just scroll it down there. As you can tell, the actual seam that we've talked about is now gone. So, alright, so now we have two different layers that we can scroll. We can scroll the background, and we can also scroll the floor. Let's also make sure the floor appears in front, so we're just going to boost the z-axis a little bit to -1. And we pretty much have our nice background over here along with the floor. But as you can tell, it doesn't scroll yet. So that is the first thing we'll tackle today. We are going to tackle the scrolling. Let's add on top of any of those objects. We're going to start with the background first and then create a new scrolling background script. You can name it whatever you want. I'll be naming it something really simple. Scrolling background. It also covers parallax, so you might want to be putting that in your name as well if you're confused. As always, we're going to clean everything up. And now, when it comes down to scrolling, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need to keep track first of the camera. So private transform, camera transform, a private transform again, but this time it's an array. Private transform array of layers, a private float that we'll call view zone, and you'll see what this is for in a moment. I'll just default it to 10. We'll also need a private int left index, private int right index, and finally a background size. So public float background size. This one has to be set manually. This is pretty much the size of your texture or your scrolling background. Now, since this is public, I will be putting it up here. And let's actually move on to the code. So, we're going to start with a private void start. Inside of here, we're going to be defining the camera transform. So we'll say camera transform is equal, and then we're going to go fetch our current camera. So camera.main.transform. We're also going to set the layers. So the array of transform is going to equal new transform array of transform.childCount. So this script is going to be put on this object. Now this object contains 3 child in it, so 1, 2, and 3. And this is pretty much what is going to return child count. We're creating a transform array of length 3. Now let's fill that array by doing a for int I is equal to 0, as long as I is smaller than transform.childCount, I++. Now we're going to say layers at the index I is equal to transform.getChild at index I. Now the left index is going to be default to 0. We don't have to set this, I'll just write it for clarity. The right index needs to be set to the very last object in that layers array. So we'll set it to layers.length -1 because the index is 0 base and the dot length isn't. And I think that is pretty much all we need to get started. So we're going to create a few functions here. We're going to create one that is called scroll left, and of course another one that is called scrolled right. Now I want these functions to be called if we're going too far towards the left side or too far towards the right side. And this is going to be checked in a update later on. But let's start by let's start by scripting the scroll left and the scroll right. So the first thing I'll declare is a int that I'll call last write is equal to write index, because we're going to be overwriting this and we need to temporarily keep a pointer towards the last index, and you'll see why in a moment. So if we're going too far towards the left side, we need to take the very right image, the one on the very right that we don't see, and put it on the left. The way we're going to be doing this is by saying layers at the right index, the one on the very right, dot position is equal to vector3 dot right times, and then we do a layers at the left position. So we're getting the position of the most left image, and then we do minus background size. And this is why we need the actual background size. Alright, once we moved our object, we need to set the new index of pretty much everything. So left index is now going to become right index, and right index is going to be minus minus. Now let's also check the boundaries of that. So if right index is smaller than 0, then so we don't get a out of range exception, we'll do right index is equal to layers dot length minus 1. Now as far as the right side goes, we'll just duplicate all of this, but just change value. So last left, is equal to left index, and now the layer at the left index dot position is equal to vector3 dot right, right index plus background size, because we're going towards the right, so we do a plus instead of going towards the left and doing a minus. So right index is going to equal left index. Now left index minus minus, and if left index is equal to the layers dot length, then if that's the case, we're going to say, oh, left index is going to equal 0 now. We're resetting it. Alright. A lot of code that we can't really test right now because it's not being triggered automatically, so we'll just quickly do something in the update function. We'll do private void update, and we'll say if input get key down, if we press on the key, say A, we're going to be scrolling towards the left. So scroll left like this. And I'm going to duplicate that, and if we press on, say, D, we're scrolling towards the right. Let's actually give this a try. Now, something we need to do before we actually test this out is set the background size. Right now it's on 0, and if we just scroll stuff, it's never going to move. So to find out how big an image is, how big a background is, you're going to go on your second image, the one in the center. Make sure it is on 0x, and then you're going to move towards the right. Pick this one and check the actual x position of it. Right now this is 11.63, so I'll just copy this over in this field. Now we can give this a try, and if we press on A or D, you can tell that it scrolls on either side. And there's a little bug here, of course. The index is out of range, so we need to fix that. Let me quickly go check that out. And the error is about here, so instead of doing a minus minus on left index, I should have been doing a plus plus. My bad for that. Let's go back and quickly check this out. As you can tell here, it scrolls toward the right side fine, now the left. And everything seems to be working just great. Now, all we need to do is actually make this automatic, so we don't actually need to press the button to trigger it. Alright, so we're going to wipe our update and actually start thinking about the logic we're going to be using. So, for the scrolling part, we're going to say if the camera transform dot position dot x, if it is smaller, then we're going to get the position of the most left image, so left index dot transform dot position dot x plus the view zone. So if it is smaller than that, that means we should actually scroll towards the left side. Scroll left right here, and then we'll do something else down here. We'll just copy this over. And if the camera that transformed that position is bigger, this time it is bigger than the rightmost image, so layers at the right index dot transform dot position dot x minus the view zone. If that's the case, we are going to scroll right. Again, let's quickly go check this out in game. And I'm simply going to zoom in my camera and move it with the camera, and as you can tell, it does it automatically, and we don't even need to worry anymore about having a background or not. Now obviously this looks a little bit weird because the actual floor is not following us, so what we're going to be doing right here is we're going to be taking our script and putting it on the floor as well. Now I know for a matter of fact that my floor is also 1163, so I'll go up here, say the background size is 1163. And our player could be going forever in that direction, and what is this? Our player could be going forever in that direction. If it wasn't for that, it would work perfectly. The reason is quite simple. We're moving our floor to a specific location next to our other floor object, but only on the x-axis. And since we do a vector3.right times that x, then we totally forget about this amount here, the y amount. So there is a few things we can do from here. We can either fix our heart so it actually works fine with the pivot point we want. We could also create a empty game object like this, and it would act as a container. So this one is at minus 1163. Let me put that here, and then just put every single object in that guy. So right now I have an empty game object that is at the position I want, and beneath it is my actual floor at -2. Then of course I duplicate that 2 more times. I'll delete the other one, and this goes at 0, this goes at 11.63. This would also work if we just give it a try. As you can tell, everything is fine. Or you could change your code and actually include the y-axis in there. It is really up to you. This method works for me, so I'll just be renaming that, and let's just say that nothing happened. Alright, now as far as the parallax goes, we are going to start tackling it right now. We're only going to be applying parallax to the background for now, not to the floor. So back in our code, to do parallax, we're going to need a few other things. What I want to do is actually keep track of the camera, so I'll do a public float parallax speed, but I'll also do a private float last camera x, and I'll just put that up here because it is a public field and I like having them up there. Alright, so last camera x is going to be set in the start, so last camera x is equal to camera transform. Let me just put it below here. Camera transform dot position dot x. It's also going to be reset in every single update. So say right about here is equal to camera transform dot position dot x. And here is what we're going to do. It is fairly simple. So all we're really doing is moving the main object, the bigger object, the parent object, using the delta x of the camera. So we're going to say float delta x is equal to camera transform dot position dot y, dot x, minus the last camera x. This way we have the delta in between them two, and we can say transform with a small t dot position plus equal vector3 dot right times delta x times parallax speed. And this way we should already have some parallax going on. So if we press on our background, give it a parallax speed of say -3, and we just play with this now. As you can tell, they scroll but at a different speed, and of course you can adjust the value up here. It can go really slowly, and it's never actually going to be outside of the view range. As you can tell, it works with the scrolling as well. And now they're on different axes. Isn't that wonderful? Alright, so I'm going to go back in the code. It actually just add 2 new bool. It's not required, but I just like doing that, so I'll just create a public bool that I'll call scrolling and then parallax. Like this. And if those are true, we're going to be doing some logic, and if they're not, we're not going to be doing that logic. So back in our update, I'll just put all of this in a if scrolling statement. And should I be doing all of this as well? I leave the actual last camera position X outside of this. So if parallax, we do these two lines. Now this way we can actually control whether or not we want some scrolling or parallax. So right now we have none of them and it should not do anything. And let's just enable the scrolling. As you can tell, it did that. Now the parallax, it did nothing, but if we just start moving a little bit, you can tell that the scrolling just came back up and the parallax also works. Alright, so I'll quickly make another layer in between of that so you guys can actually have a look at the product of this, what it can actually give you if you just put a little bit of time into it. And here it is, guys. So this is an example of what you could actually get if you just put a little bit of time into creating your art and also adding this parallax stuff I've talked about. It looks pretty good and it can be used, it is used actually in a lot of games you see today, and you should use it. So I hope you guys learned something, and if you did, please leave me a like. It really helps me out a lot, and think about pledging to Patreon as well. What really helped me out a lot would be helping me just keep this show rolling and also make more videos. It also gives you some reward that you can of course check out on the Patreon page. So all the links are in the description below. Also, if you have any comment or question, please leave them in the comment section below. Other than that, please subscribe for more tutorials like these, and I will see you guys next time.